waiting for the last few people to join. It would be wonderful if you could head to the chat and give us a quick, what's your name, what's your organization, and maybe where are you calling in from? Where in the world are you calling in from today? And we'll get going in just 1 minute. Fantastic, 21 people already. This is great. Alexa Krolls, lovely example. Hello, how are things in Riga, Latvia?
This time of year, wonderful sunshine till 10 o'clock at night.
Fantastic.
So enjoying the light.
Fantastic. Hi, Edson. How's it going in Mozambique?
Hi, everyone. Very good. Thank you.
Great, great. We have Sharif, Tajikistan, Mithlesh, Eric. Brilliant. Lots of folks. That's great. All right, so we have a packed schedule today. We're really gonna dive into things. So I think maybe we'll give it 30 more seconds, and then OpenFN team, if there are no objections, I say we kick off. Sound good?
Great.
That
Okay.
sounds great.
We've got Betsy. Oh, Pop Council, Nairobi. Hello, Betsy.
Hello.
Pop Council.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, I'm good.
That's great. Jacodia, IntraHealth. Oh, so many people here. Wonderful. Io, what's the weather like in Birmingham?
Pretty cool today. 20 degrees, so not too hot, not too cold. Very good for you to probably spend some time in your park.
So a little bit cloudy in London. Or Megan, what's it like down in Cape Town right now?
It's still chilly here, Kay. Taylor. Yeah. We love a good chilly Cape Town.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, I think we've waited our obligatory 5 minutes and we've talked about the weather enough. So maybe we can do a really quick round of introductions from the OpenFN team that are here, and then we'll dive right into it. I can kick off. My name is Taylor Downs. I'm OpenFN's founder. I'm currently based in the United Kingdom, and I've spent most of my career working in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, first on public health programs, and then later in data integration and data systems for governments and nonprofits around the world. I am joined, let's go alphabetical order. So AL comes before AY. So Alexa Krolls, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. Alexa calling in here from the Open Function Core team. With the team, I focus primarily on services, so working with different NGOs, government partners, some of you on the call, on figuring out how to translate your business processes or data exchange workflows into open function automated workflow requirements. So really happy to be here today to talk through some use cases and to help in the chat if you've got any questions. So over to you, Ayodele.
All right. Hi, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here today. Good to have you. My name is Ayodele. I'm from Nigeria, but I live in Birmingham, UK, and I lead products at OpenFunction. Before OpenFunction, I'll probably also be joining this call because I'd worked with governments, especially in Nigeria and a few sub-Saharan African countries, basically to think around data integration, around public health systems, and also thinking around technology. But I'm really excited to have you here and also to learn pretty much about your use cases and also see how you can leverage, OpenFunction for most of your DHIS2 workflows as much as possible. Thank you. I'm passing the baton to Megan.
Oh, thanks, Io. Thanks, everyone. It's lovely to see some of the names that I've been connecting with. I'm Megan. I'm calling in from Cape Town, and I fulfill the role of head of sales for OpenFN. So really just interacting with clients on their requirements and giving large overviews on OpenFN's capabilities.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for joining today. This session, wow, we're packed right now. We have 34 people in the room. This session will do a little bit of an overview of OpenFN, and I can talk through just a touch of our history and where we're used. Alexa will introduce you to a couple of ways that we're currently being used or have been used to do DHIS2 based integrations. And then we're going to dive into it. And we're actually going to build a connection between some source system and DHIS2. And we will do this all together. It will be live. We'll be using test systems. We can't promise that it'll work, but at least you'll be able to see us create a workflow, an automated workflow that loads some information into a real DHIS2 system on the fly. And we will do our best to have a running workflow by the end of the call, but also to move slowly enough that we can really explain the different parts of the platform. So without further ado, oh, and sorry, just one other thing. Alexa and I will be sort of mainly driving the workflow design and workflow implementation, while Ayodele, our product lead at OpenFN, will be manning the chat. And as any good product manager knows, he will try to embody sort of the voice of the user. So hopefully you all will be asking questions, we'll be making suggestions, and Ayodele is almost like your community microphone. So he'll be working alongside Alexa and I as we build out this workflow. Sound good?
Great.
Excellent. Okay, so quickly, what is OpenFN? It's the leading digital public good for workflow automation. We go by many names. Sometimes we're referred to as a data exchange layer or as a integration platform as a service, a data integration platform, an interoperability layer. But in essence, what we do in 40+ countries, many times every year, is we automate these digital business processes for nonprofits, governments, and social enterprises around the world. We are currently used mostly in the social sector. So we do have a couple of, I said before, these social enterprise clients, but most of our customers, most of our users, whether it's locally deployed or through our cloud service, they are nonprofits and governments. That doesn't mean that we can't be used by private companies. It just, our sector that we've worked in over the years primarily has been nonprofits and governments. And actually within that space, while we've seen projects in environmental protection and education and gender-based violence issues, we've actually had a large number of applications within public health and humanitarian spaces. So this is why we're focusing on DHIS2 today. We've done a lot of really interesting work with DHIS2 and the public health domain. So we'll talk about that primarily today. Great. So OpenFN, it fits into this broader OpenHIE architecture that many of you may be aware of if you're working in digital transformation in the health space. And within the OpenHIE architecture, you may also hear OpenFN referred to as a workflow engine. And we're actually used in conjunction with other parts of the OpenHIE architecture pretty commonly. Obviously, there are point of care or point of service systems down here. There's the OpenHIE component layer, and then you'll sometimes see both a tool like OpenHIM and a tool like OpenFN used to facilitate workflow and interoperability between the various aspects in the OpenHIE architecture. We are used both to help organizations and ministries comply with standards and also to enable disparate systems that maybe weren't all built on fire from day one to actually work with modern architectures. So OpenFN is this broad tool that allows you to design and implement workflows across all of the different aspects of your stack. And if it's OpenHIE, and if today we're talking about DHIS2 and health or public health systems, it's across your public health information stack. Some cool things you can do with OpenFN, which we'll show you in a second. At first, you can integrate with any application. Anything. So we've got adapters that make it easier to work with a number of the most common tools in international development, but we also have generic HTTP adapters or database connectors. And this means that when we're working with a ministry or with a nonprofit and they say, hey, can you connect to my custom system X? It might take a little bit of reading. We'll have to go check the API documentation, but the answer is yes, and that's really important. It not only allows you to design and build these workflows, but it also gives you this really powerful sort of management interface to sort of see how the work in your organization fits, to monitor your projects with an audit trail. We'll get into handling errors and reprocessing failed work. And then, of course, all of the stuff that you're doing on OpenFN, you can reuse it and apply it to different projects. So you can create efficiencies downstream for your organization. Alexa, before we move into the demo itself, anything else you want to add on sort of, what are the benefits of OpenFN? What are the main features of the platform that you see your customers sort of focusing on most?
Yeah, I think just to flag as a digital public good, everything that is listed here and that you're going to see today is open source, top to bottom. We're going to be building on our cloud version of the platform that our core team hosts. And I will drop a link in the chat just to register if you already don't have a free account and just want to get started quickly with a free account on our cloud platform. But of course, there's lots of documentation on our documentation site around deployment, hosted offerings that our team offers. But today, we're really going to zone in on a specific use case of connecting DHIS2 with different applications. But as Taylor mentioned, we can connect all sorts of workflows. So if you ever want to engage with our team to learn more about different types of workflows, explore different use cases, feel free to follow up with us after the webinar or to post on community. And our community is really prioritizing sharing, reusability, in both the actual configurations that organizations develop. A lot of these workflows, our partners will open source. And so that way you can borrow from other organizations' workflows, but also in learnings and knowledge and adapters. So some more to come on that later today. Thanks, Taylor.
Cool. All right. So as we do this little demo / training and build out a workflow, there are a couple of things that we'd like you to look for in the platform. So first, all of the workflows on OpenFN are organized within projects, and this allows a large organization running OpenFN to actually isolate different teams, sort of access and permission management across the work that they're doing. The workflow itself is fairly self-explanatory. You'll see it in a second. It's boxes and arrows that describe what must be done with your data flow. You will see particular work orders and runs, which are the instances of executing a particular process. And then finally, you'll notice triggers and credentials. And triggers, they are what automatically start a workflow. And credentials are how that workflow can connect to secure systems. So just keep an eye out for these as we move into the demo. Alexa, I'll go log into OpenFN right now. While I'm getting set up, would you mind just giving us, 20 seconds on a couple of these different DHIS2 workflows that we've worked on in the past. Oh, I think you're muted.
Absolutely. So today, as I mentioned, we're focusing on a DHIS2 use case specifically. So far to date, we've seen OpenFunction used in a number of ways to integrate DHIS2 with other external applications. And sometimes these workflows have been implemented by our team, sometimes by government partners, sometimes by other vendors working in country with different governments and NGOs. But I think just briefly, some really common example workflows that we've seen come out of the DHIS2 space is one for reporting. With the Ministry of Health in St. Lucia, they're using OpenFunction to get data from an immunization database, do a bunch of calculation and aggregation to generate indicator results, and summarize that individual data into a nice dashboard for the epidemiology team to manage and monitor and kind of react to vaccine campaigns happening across the country. So I think a really common pattern is like extraction and then aggregating to calculate indicator results, and then setting that up or importing that to DHIS2. The next really common use case that we've seen is also just individual level data. So a lot of times organizations are using applications like ComCare, Cobalt Toolbox, ODK to register individuals and need to report that to some sort of other system like DHIS2. With Swiss TPH, they implemented OpenFunction to automate this workflow for reporting these different cases collected in ComCare from a number of different health sites and reporting that up to DHIS2, which they were using at a regional level for monitoring case incidents and disease incidents. And then later, what they did is they moved that off the cloud onto local infrastructure using open source tooling that OpenFunction provides for deployment. And they actually implement that alongside OpenHIM. So already in Nigeria, the government was using HIM as the central interoperability layer across the health information exchange, but we're able to plug in OpenFunction to own the workflow, which OpenFunction was doing all of this business logic to get the right ComCare data, prepare it into the right format, to then route to kind of the central health information exchange. So you don't need both OpenFunction and OpenHIM in a ComCare or any of these integrations. Sometimes we see organizations just implementing OpenFunction as an independent interoperability layer, but sometimes we do see these complementary OpenFunction, OpenHIM implementations where maybe OpenHIM is already in play or certain specifications from the HIE standard specification are required. But I'll drop some links to the chat because I see some
good
comments.
for the follow-up questions as well.
Yeah, and we can come back to OpenHIM, OpenFunction later.
And there's some good stuff there. We're doing some really exciting work with Gembi and OpenHIM right now, actually. So there are fun and exciting reasons that you would be using them together. But let's focus not on that right now. We can come back to it later.
Fantastic. And another example is sometimes systems, particularly legacy ones that we're connecting with, don't have an API, or even it's not possible to get access to a direct database. We've done a number of use cases where we're taking like CSV exports from old legacy systems, cleaning and transforming that data, and then helping to import that into DHIS2. So yeah, just some other examples. But Taylor, let's go ahead and dig in. I think we've got a lot to cover. If at time we can come back to these.
Yeah, sorry, Alexa. So there's a question on the reporting dashboard. Do you want to?
Can we come back to it?
Great, that's fine.
Yeah, I'll send in the chat.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. All right. So we're going to build a workflow today. Alexa Krols, as our implementation expert, give me an example workflow that we'd be doing for DHIS2. What should we call this thing?
A really common use case, Taylor, that I've been seeing a lot lately is that we have like individual data, like patients, in an external system like ComCare or some sort of health information system, and we need to get those over to DHIS2 as tracked entity instances. So I'm wondering if we can kind of build a workflow together that gets patients or people from an API and imports those into DHIS2.
Absolutely.
But we'll probably need to do a little data cleaning along the way.
You got it. All right, I'm going to call it CHW, Community Health Worker to DHIS2. That'll be our workflow. All right, so right now we're looking at the canvas. This is where we're going to start to build our workflow on OpenFN. So Alexa, you mentioned that we're going to get data from some source system. Is that source system going to send us information in real time? Or are we going to have to reach out and get data from that system's API?
It's a good question. So I know with a lot of these mobile data collection tools like CommCare, Cobalt Toolbox, there's a data forwarding feature or webhook service that allows for that real-time pushing to OpenFunction. But
okay,
I
and
think
that would be using a webhook trigger like this.
Yeah, exactly. But for this use case, Taylor, let's imagine we're connecting with a system, and let's say every day we want to go get any newly registered people and sync them over to DHIS2. So I know this comes up a lot of like how is scheduling managed in OpenFunction?
Yeah, absolutely. So scheduling, so as Alexa was saying, we can receive data in real time from these external applications using a webhook trigger. You can add authentication on that webhook trigger. And you can also actually, this is just in beta right now, but you can also connect to a Kafka cluster, and you can get data from a Kafka topic if you have really big data sets and you want to use something like Kafka to help manage, billions, trillions of records. But today we're going to be running something on a schedule. And the schedule we'll use, Alexa, you were saying every day. Midnight okay for you? Or should we go 2 a.m.?
Yeah, I think a daily midnight, and generally, Taylor, I guess, can we configure that schedule pretty flexibly? Like, could we do twice a week, every Monday, or something like that?
We could run every week on a particular day. We could run every month, or you can write custom cron expressions as well. Cron itself is a sort of scripting language for creating complex schedules. And if you want to run at 2:10 a.m. on day 1 of the month, you could do so. So cron is pretty flexible. That's not an OpenFN technology, by the way. Cron is just a standard technology. But for our use case today, we're going to run every day at 2 a.m. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds great. So then once we're running this on a daily basis, the workflow that I see users often want to implement is they want to get, a list of people in bulk, and maybe, get everyone, might be get people updated since the last time we synced. Can you just speak a little bit to kind of how we might configure that first step?
Yeah, sure. So we're connecting to a source system. Today we need a non-sensitive and publicly available system to connect to on a live recorded demo. So I was thinking,
got one for you.
Yeah. Okay. JSON placeholder.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's a fake API with some dummy data. So I'm actually going to put the link in the chat in case anyone's following along. This is an API that returns a list of users or people that we can practice importing into DHIS2 if you guys want to follow along.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to use an HTTP adapter for step 1. Now, to connect, we're going to add a credential here, and this will be an HTTP credential. So this will be our JSON placeholder credential. It's open. We don't need a username and password, but I can put in that base URL. That would actually be quite helpful here. And
Taylor, typically with credentials, I know you're entering the details here. I know we store them encrypted, but yeah, can you speak to a little bit of just kind of like how credentials are managed in the platform?
Yes, absolutely. So credentials are owned by individuals. They are often usernames, passwords, API tokens. They're secrets, and they are isolated from the workflows themselves. So if I have a username and password that I want to delegate for use in this particular project, I can enter it into the credential management system in OpenFN, and I can grant access to a particular project. This is the Taylor test project. When I do that, you can see that this workflow can now use my JSON placeholder credential. The secrets will be passed in to the runtime just in time, and they'll be cleared from the runtime at the end. We have all sorts of interesting sort of credential protection features in place that would obfuscate leaked data, stuff like that. But suffice to say that credentials are a little bit separate from workflow code because you don't want everybody on your team to be able to see or edit your username and password, but you may want to delegate use for your particular username to a running workflow on OpenFN.
Got it. And I know, Taylor, that it looks like we're using the HTTP adapter here, but I'm wondering, can you speak to, I see a long list of adapters there, just kind of what those are and how adapters work in OpenFunction?
Yeah, absolutely. So adapters contain helper functions for these different systems that we connect to. If we were pulling data from Kobo Toolbox, we'd use the Kobo Toolbox adapter, and it would allow us to get submissions nice and easy. Or maybe we'd use the ODK adapter or the, I don't know, the ComCare adapter. Do we have a ComCare adapter? There you go. Because we're using a generic system and JSON placeholder simply has a REST API, we're going to use the HTTP adapter. And when we do that, we'll see that there are a number of helper functions that are exposed here. Can you guys still see my screen? Yep. Cool. So these helper functions include things like the get function. So Alexa, the first thing that we wanted to do here is get a bunch of people from this sort of fake public API. The endpoint you said was a user's endpoint?
Yeah, so firstly, Taylor, I saw that you opened up the inspector here, and it looks like we've got these adapter docs preloaded here on the bottom. Do you mind just orienting us quickly to the interfaces here?
Absolutely. So the inspector, which sits behind the canvas, you have three panels. You have your input on the left, you have your job code in the middle, and then you have your output, your run logs, your run metadata on the right. There's nothing over on the right yet because we haven't run anything. So we've just got our input on the left and our editor in the middle. The first thing that we're going to do here is perform a GET request to the user's endpoint. And you can pass in a query, you can pass in headers, you can customize this in all the ways that you might want to customize an HTTP request. A query would be really useful, actually, if we were only getting users for a certain type or that had been registered on a certain date. But right now, we're going to go with the defaults for everything. So I would expect that our first job would look something like that. We're going to make a GET request to the user's endpoint. We're using the HTTP adapter, and we're using this JSON placeholder credential. I don't need any input data over here because this is running on a schedule, and we'll run this thing. Right now, what OpenFN is doing when you ask for a manual run is it's finding an available worker from a list of JavaScript workers that are attached to the app. And when the worker comes online, it will then, here I'm going to click over to the history interface. When a worker comes online, right now you see in queued, it will pick up that work order, it will bring in the credential data, it'll start processing it, and it'll send our logs back to the front end. So our get people run seems to have just succeeded. We can get the logs here, but I actually want to show you that process sort of in real time, and we'll see what we get as the output. So we have an input, we have users, we have an output, but let's run it again. Send a request for a run, JavaScript worker comes online, it streams back the logs to the front end. our input is on the left, our job code is in the middle. Here are the logs. We could actually check out the output on the right. So what's in our output? It looks like JSON placeholder gave us a ton of data on these various people. They've got phone numbers and streets and websites and users and all this good stuff. Alexa Kroll, step one, done. We've got a bunch of users from a source system. What do we do next?
Can I ask just a couple other quick questions on the interface before we go to the next step, Taylor?
Yeah,
I was wondering if you can speak a little bit more to input and like what that panel is used for. Because I know in this workflow, we're getting data that we want to bring into the workflow, so we don't really have an input to start. But like, what might users put in that input panel for other use cases?
Sure. So the input and the output of any step in OpenFN, it's a JSON object. We call it state. If this were a webhook triggered workflow, the initial state or the input would be the body of whatever had been posted to OpenFN. If this were a Kafka triggered workflow, it would be the Kafka message. And if you're just testing, and if you're creating stuff yourself, you could write anything you want in here, a test for the webinar, and you could run this job using that particular input. So like if you're trying to see how the thing will respond with a particular input, you could sort of type in something yourself there. Make sense?
Yeah, great. So if we were to do a different type of workflow where we want it based off an event, like a form being submitted and ComCare, and that to trigger the workflow, on the left in the input, we might see that actual form submission. And then in that job, we could design the workflow in a way to take that input and manipulate it and map it how we'd like. Is that right?
Exactly. And let's do that cleaning and mapping now in step 2.
Okay, cool. So I know for this use case, we're getting a bunch of people. I want to eventually map them to tracked entity instances and DHIS2 and the tracker module.
Sure.
But I think we're going to need to do a bit of data cleaning.
Okay.
I don't see a very obvious unique identifier. So I just talked to my fake client and they told me that we can maybe use phone number as an identifier. And we want to make sure that we're mapping the right name and information over to DHIS2. So can you show us like what does that transformation step typically look like in OpenFunction?
Absolutely. So just to highlight maybe the common adapter, we can do a step where we're not calling out to any APIs. We're instead doing a little data transformation right in the middle. So I've added a step here, and actually it would be kind of interesting to talk for a second about paths. This path right now, we're saying anytime the first step succeeds, we want to go to the clean data step. And we could branch, we could merge, we could even apply conditions on these different paths. So maybe for this one, rather than on success or on failure or always, we could highlight a slightly more sophisticated path condition. And this one would be, the condition would be, we have data. So here we can write a little expression like state.data.length is greater than 0. And if we save that and run this thing again, what we'll want to see is that given an expected output on this guy with values in the data, we'll get to step 2. And we have. Great. So step 1, input is blank. Output has stuff in this data key. And that means we move to step 2. So we're looking at step 2. We're cleaning data. We've got our input over on the left, which is this big data array. And we need to do some mapping, some transformation here. So you told me that you wanted to drop a lot of this information because we don't need it all in DHIS2 and create some sort of unique identifier. Yeah?
Yeah, I think in this DHIS2 system, we don't need a lot of this info like address. So let's kind of discard some of these attributes that we don't need, and let's just pull over name. And I think we'll need a unique identifier. So
okay.
I'm wondering, I'm noticing in the input, there's a phone number. It's got a bunch of dashes, and I don't think that will match with DHIS2 validation. So could we maybe get rid of those dashes and turn that into a UID string that we can use as we import that as a tracked entity?
Yep. Absolutely. So the first thing we're going to do here is create a little open function block. This FN block is really useful for writing pure JavaScript. It gives us the ability to do any sort of complex data transformation, data mapping, anything under the sun. It's effectively a little code playground. I've created an operation here. It's an FN, and it's going to take state. And by the way, state will be this input state over here on the left. And at the end, it's going to return state. That'll be the desired output state on the right. In the middle, we're going to do that cleaning. So let's call it const clean data, or I don't know, clean users, something like that. And this thing will be, let's see, state.data .map. And then for each user in there, I'll call the users U, we are going to return only their name. And help me out here. So user name would be u.name, and we're going to return for the unique ID. We want to return u.phone, and we're going to want to clean that in some sophisticated way. Then when we return down here, rather than sending back all of state, I'm actually just going to send our clean users. So let me run that first. See if I'm anywhere in the right ballpark. And sorry, my screen's freezing up just a little bit. Can you all still see and hear me?
Yeah, and a question in chat, Taylor. What language are you using in the FN function?
JavaScript. So OpenFN is all JavaScript, JSON, REST API based. That's like the main thing that you're interacting with. Sometimes you're doing some SQL scripting. Sometimes you're using some other languages, but it all actually exists within a JavaScript worker runtime. Great question. Great question. There's really good docs on this stuff too. Please do check out docs.openfn.org, and you can even see exactly how all these adapters work in the adapters repo. It's all, of course, all this stuff is completely open source.
Taylor, could we zoom in? Comment in the chat that it's quite small. And
quite
hard
small.
To see.
Yeah, cool.
Is this any better?
Sorry about the zoom level. Is this better? Yeah, cool. Thanks, my bong way. Oh, hello, Farai. How are you? Okay, cool. So now Farai is good. Great. So now, left side, here's our input. We have state with a data key and a references key. And now our output, we have this clean users array. We are getting there. You wanted to do something kind of sophisticated on the phone. You wanted to remove hyphens, spaces, stuff like that. So maybe we just
I was wondering if we can do a little JavaScript to just clean up that phone number and to remove any hyphens, so that way it's a DHIS2 compliant ID, because I think there's some validation on that attribute in DHIS2.
Yes, we can do that. I'll need to Google search a string.replace function, but that shouldn't be too hard. So let's see, string.replace. If anybody knows a way to do string.replace that drops hyphens, please paste it in the chat right now. Let's see. Okay, this will work. So we'll do a dot replace, and we're going to take the hyphens and replace them with empty empty strings. Let's try that. We'll run it again. If there are any JavaScript developers on the call and I've just done something absolutely terrible, please let me know. Let's see our output now. Cool. Okay, hyphens are gone. Should we get rid of the spaces also?
Yeah, let's make it one string, no spaces.
No spaces. Do another replace. There are probably a bunch of engineers on the call right now who are unhappy with my code quality. We get people, we clean the data, the output. Yeah, that's good enough, right? Name, unique ID.
Yeah, that will work. Awesome.
Okay, so let's zoom out again. What do we have here? We've got some people from this, the first step was getting users and then cleaning data, pick out name and unique ID. Now let's get to the really fun bit. We wanted to add them to DHIS2.
Yeah, let's track to these instances.
Map and load TEIs. Cool. For this one, DHIS2 adapter, and we will need a credential. So DHIS2, configure credential. We'll use a play demo for DHIS2. Host URL for DHIS2 play demo.
I've got one I'm going to put in the chat that I know this DHIS2 demo has tracker up and running.
Okay, cool. Demo DHIS2, got it. All right, so for the base URL here, I'm going to use host URL would be demos.dhis2.org/HMIS, an HMIS system. Cool. And I'm actually going to go over to the website there, DHIS2 play, and I want the demo English username. So I'm going to jump back. Username will be demo English. Jump to DHIS2. It'll be district1. I'll copy that, and I will paste that in there. And we've got our play demo. This, I guess we should say like HMIS play demo. Save. Okay. Cool. Workflow saved. Which screen am I sharing?
DHIS2 on the screen, so if we can flip back.
Oh, dang. I'm sorry. Let's go back here. Sorry, guys. I'm all over the place in the wrong tab. What we wanted was DHIS2 in OpenFn. Cool. Let's do a play. Webinar 1. Username we said was demo English. Password was district1. Save. Great. All right. You can see my OpenFN canvas now, yeah?
Yep. And
Cool.
so now can we map the data that we cleaned to tracked entity instances?
Map the data to TEIs. We can do that. Yeah, absolutely. I want to get some sample data here. So I'm going to run this thing from the top. CHW to DHIS2, going to retry this. We can come back and talk about the history page later. I first want to just see the end result in DHIS2. CHIS2 to DHIS2, get people, clean data, map and load to TEIs. Cool. Let's go back to the workflow and to the run itself. Great. Now, we're in business. Can you all see my screen? And do you see the clean users as the input on the left?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. All right.
And can you zoom in as you're working on your job?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to give this a nice little comment here. We'll say map and load TEIs. Because we have an array of users on the left, I'm actually going to use an OpenFN each function. So what we'll be doing here is an each like this, and each takes first it takes an array or a path to an array. So that'll be clean users. That's the first argument is the data source. And the next one is the operation we want to perform. And here we want to do create, and we want to create tracked entity instances. So we'll do create. What we're going to create in DHIS2 is going to be TEIs. I'm going to see if I can get, yeah, cool. Oh, so maybe, hold on, maybe one quick aside here on using these helper functions. For certain adapters like DHIS2, we actually provide ways of discovering from the DHIS2 API. So you can see that right here in the documentation, there's a way
Can you
to.
scoot, Taylor?
What's that?
Can you zoom in maybe a little bit or collapse one of the panels?
Yeah, sorry. Is this getting a little bit bigger and better?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So when I choose to create something in DHIS2, if I hit Control Spacebar, it will actually use our credential to connect to your DHIS2 system and tell me what things I can create. So in this case, I want to create a tracked entity instance. All right, what do we need to put in that tracked entity instance? Well, DHIS2 tells us we need an org unit. I'll use my magic function again, and I'll pick one of the org units from DHIS2. And you can see that what's happening in the background right now is OpenFn, using the credential and this magic function, is connecting to DHIS2 and returning metadata. So I'd like to use the CH Mahosot organization unit, the tracked entity type. Let's use person. And as far as the information, the attributes, that needs to be an array, and every attribute needs an attribute itself. And sorry, Alexa, we were doing like an ID and name, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so the ID will use this case ID. I need my left panel again for a second, if you don't mind. The value here, that will be $unique ID. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Just going to format. The next attribute, the attribute will be, do we have some sort of like name attribute in DHIS2? Name of farmer? Can we work with farmers today? Is that all right?
Sure.
Sure. Name of farmer. And the value for that, let's go $.name. All right. Sorry, I actually built this outside the each, but we want to put this whole thing in our each block. So what this is doing right now is it's saying for each item in this clean users array, Leanne, Irvin, Clementine, Patricia, please create a tracked entity instance in DHIS2 with this org unit, this tracked entity type, and these attributes. And let's see how it goes. We'll stream the logs here. Oh, baby. Okay, so we're sending data to DHIS2. DHIS2 responds with a 200. Import was successful. Here's where the crowd goes wild, typically. We are doing it, in theory, we're doing this 10 times. Yeah, we are. We can even go check the output. And after clean users, yeah, we can see all the success responses from DHIS2 here. I feel like we went a little bit too fast at the end. Maybe we can zoom out a little bit and talk about what we just did, or
yeah, Taylor, we've got 10 minutes. So do you mind if we go back to the canvas, and I'll pull out a couple of questions from the chat. And then if folks have questions, please keep putting them in the chat.
Okay.
But I think, Taylor, if you can go back to the workflow view so we can look at all steps here.
Workflow view, yes.
Nice. So I think this is really nice to see, like a really common pattern. We've seen a lot of these open function workflows where there's almost like these ETL steps where we're doing a bit of transformation, and then we're loading into a target system. There are some questions in the chat just around like, how does open function support data enrichment? What if we had to do like calculations, like calculating the sum for indicator results or aggregating? What does that typically look like at a high level?
Great question. So for data enrichment, typically what we're talking about when we're talking about data enrichment is you're getting some source data from your application A, your Open Data Kit, or your Kobo, or whatever it is. But then you're actually making another GET request to some external API. Maybe you're getting farmer data from ODK, but then you also need to get weather data from a National Weather Service endpoint. Then, just in the same way you would tackle calculations or string replacement, you can merge those data sets in your mapping step. And by the way, like, you can just keep going. You can add as many steps as you want in a workflow. You can even have workflows merge just as well as you can have them fork. An example of a calculation would be something like, I don't know, we have ID. There's an ID field here. Let's do const sum calc equals state dot data dot. Let's go to the first item in the data, and I don't know, get the ID and multiply it by 15. Actually, let's take the 1th item in the data, and then console.log sum calc. Let me run that again to see if we can see that output. But basically, when you're doing, there we go, 30. So the 1th item in the data, the ID is 2. We've just done a calculation. We've multiplied it by 15, and we're outputting 30. I should have given it a nice little label here. I should have said the result is sum calc. I'll run it again. But good question. OpenFN is quite commonly used for this type of data enrichment or calculation. Anything you can do in JavaScript, you can do in OpenFN.
Yeah, and Taylor, maybe you can zoom out again. I know another way a lot of organizations use open function is they might even add a step to their workflow where they'll go get terminology lists, other data sets from some sort of resource, connect to a tool like Open Concept Lab to pull mapping rules, and enrich their workflow. Do like a
fetch from OCL step. Say you had some data that was already mapped, and this was like, we could say we have proper data over here. But then on this branch, we would say we need more info. So maybe you're performing a test, and some of the information coming from your source system doesn't have all the required fields. We could go get data from somewhere else and then still load it into DHIS2. So you can handle all this logic within the workflow.
Great. And what about adapters, Taylor? There's some questions in the chat on like how we build those, how we maintain those. I know our core team is constantly working on adapter enhancements and update, but wondering if you and Ayodele can speak to roadmap and how folks can watch or contribute to what we're working on. It seems like there's some questions in the chat around what's in our roadmap, how to track contributions, things like that.
Absolutely. I'll turn it over to Io in a second for how you should engage with him and the team in terms of getting your priorities on the roadmap and how you can contribute. But I'll say from the technical perspective that these are little JavaScript modules that wrap up the APIs and make it easier to work with the APIs of really commonly used tools across the space. It's all public. It's all accessible. You can see what we're working on, and you can ask to work on stuff yourself contribute adapters. We just, IO actually didn't, OpenSPP just built an adapter for their own technology. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and tell people how they can contribute?
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I think I'll start with, OpenSPP, which is like a pretty much very recent experience that we just had. OpenSPP, for folks who didn't know OpenSPP, have a DPG for social protection, and they work with governments and administrations around the world to actually help them manage, that entire process efficiently with their software. And what they've done really is actually building an adapter, an OpenFn adapter for OpenSPP that then allows users who are, for instance, collecting data on a tool like Cobalt Toolbox or integrating data from DHIS2 to be able to send data into the OpenSPP platform in itself. And the way they've done that really is actually, going to the docs website, seeing the documentation we've had, like, documented, procedure around how to contribute, so you can easily get that started. We also have a community, which we're talking about, in a minute, that then allows you also to be able to get help, ask questions whilst you're trying to go through that entire process in itself. Currently, because we're going into a new quarter as well, we are updating our roadmap to actually cover what we're working on right now and what we'll be working on over the next 6 months thereabout. And we'll be updating that in a few weeks, and posting that as well in the community for everyone to be able to access. The last part of that is we've just introduced what we call Canny, and that's really a very good approach to thinking around getting feature requests from the community and from users generally. But then beyond just getting those requests, you can also upvote for features that you think we should be having, and if you have an idea around how we should be implementing study features, you can do that. I think an example of that, Taylor, if you can open the second one on the list, when a user opens an editor, that I think that's where we have active conversation around.
Sure, yeah,
be able to implement a particular feature. So feel free to we'll send all these links after now. So please feel free to be able to contribute, give us your ideas around how you think we should be able to implement features, and we'll be very happy to get them in. Yes, Manzi, it's complete. Open Function is completely open source, so you can contribute yourself, you can deploy locally as much as possible.
Great. And I know we've just got a couple minutes. So Taylor, I was wondering if we can chat a little bit around just the history interface, because that's a pretty big part of integration, monitoring, troubleshooting. Folks, there's a lot we're not covering. We're not going to chat about settings. And in settings, that's a lot of things that you can do to manage users, access, data storage, retention policies, things that are really important for compliance. Joshua, I'm seeing your chats around migration. So migrating configuration between different projects. We'll follow up with you on community on that one. There's lots to cover in migration, deployment, things like that. So Taylor, I know history, that's what we're interacting with once the workflow is up and running. Can you walk us through some of the key features here?
Yeah, absolutely. So the history interface is where you monitor and troubleshoot and sort of manage the workflows that you've built over on the workflow interface. Here's our workflow. We go to the history page, and you can see all of the different times that this workflow has been executed. You can search and filter. So maybe we want to just look at this CHW to DHIS2 work order. You can filter by status. You can apply time filters for when the work order is received, when the last run was on that work order. All of this stuff is possible through the history interface. And maybe one more thing to note, or two things actually, if you'll humor me. So for a particular work order, get patient A from location X to location Y, you may actually have to reprocess it a number of times. And those things can all be grouped together as a single work order with multiple runs. You can see all the different runs under this particular work order if I expand these 11 different attempts that we made. One of the really cool things about OpenFN is if you have a big data pipeline with lots of heavy-duty steps, if something fails on the third step, but everything worked perfectly on step 1 and step 2, OpenFN actually allows you to skip the first steps and just rerun a workflow from a downstream step. So here we'll say, all right, we've already done steps 1 and 2. We're going to skip past them. And then when the worker claims when the worker claims this work order, it'll just jump right to the final step. That's one of the more powerful features of OpenFN. I would say another big thing for managing these projects at scale is reprocessing. So going back and finding, a whole bunch of workflows that failed and then retrying those workflows. These are like 2 of the most common patterns we see on the history side.
Great. Well, I think that's a wrap at the hour. I know we're at time, but there's so much more to unpack here. So stay tuned for more upcoming webinars. In the meantime, we'll be sure to follow up with links and recordings and videos, but please find us on community, reach out with your questions. Happy to share what we're working on, what we see our other partners working on. While we've got the core team here on the call, there are other folks out there. I don't know if the Google Meet is going to cut us off, but in case anyone does have any questions, we can stick around for a couple minutes just to see. But just heads up, not sure about the Google Meet timing, but let's give it a go. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Ayodele, and thank you, Alexa.
It looks like, Taylor, we do have a hand from Mithilesh.
Yeah, go for it. Come off mute, Mithilesh. Welcome. Can you hear us? Or maybe Betsy, if you want to go first while Mithilesh is sorting out the microphone issues.
Thank you for the presentation. Would you be sharing the recording?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll post this on our I believe on our YouTube channel. But Megan and the team will get in touch afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
I don't know if Mithilesh is managed.
Yeah,
Mithilesh?
Mithilesh, do you still have something you'd like to ask?
Yeah. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Hi. Yeah. Actually, I'm looking. Actually, I have developed the environment health system in St. Lucia and DHIS2.
Amazing. So, have you worked with
so,
Open Solutions for Health at all, or have you interacted?
No. I'm not working on the open solution Health Pro, but I have developed these in the 2016 and also upgraded this system to latest version of DHIS2 in 2022 and 23.
Fantastic.
And the DHIS application is running on St. Lucia based on development or implementation from our side. So I want to know how to connect this FN to the DHIS. How the FN work with DHIS?
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Alexa. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's great to meet you, Mithilesh. We're actually working with a team based in the Caribbean called Open Solutions for Health. And they're actively talking with the St. Lucia Ministry of Health around a local deployment of OpenFunction. But today they're using our cloud version of the platform that our core team hosts. So Ayodele dropped a registration link. We'll send another link afterwards in case you're interested on that. But today you can get started with using the cloud hosted version to connect DHIS2. But the local deployment.
St. Lucia, St. Lucia uses the environmental health system in the DHIS. Ministry of Health uses this DHIS application for the COVID vaccination analysis and different type of portlet, port solution, everything in DHIS. We are developing these software, this application in DHIS latest work.
Mithilesh, particularly because you have such a robust DHIS2 implementation and because you're going to be doing so many things in it, I think we should talk because I'm sure you'll come across all these different requirements to bring in environmental health data here, vaccination data here, etc. So I would say please do reach out or make sure that you've left your contact information in the chat, and we can make sure to get you everything you need.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Thank you so much. That's exciting to hear about your work. Are there any other questions from the group? I see a bunch of friendly faces here. Hi, Joshua.
Hey, Taylor. Hey, hey, Alexa. Nice
How's
to
it
meet
going?
you. So far, I'm new to OpenFn, and I'm still figuring out how to run it, how to import migrations, because Michael had done something with OpenMRS and DHIS2 using OpenFn. So I'm diving in to make sure that it runs on the server,
and you're doing a very interesting local deployment, right? You're doing basically a Docker Compose based deployment that will include all-in-one container, maybe? Will it include, or sorry, all-in-one machine, one Compose file? It will include OpenMRS, DHIS2, and OpenFN.
Exactly.
It's exciting. It's exciting. Yeah, I know Alexa and Frank and the team will be working closely with you to make sure that we can make that a really, really fantastic example. But then hopefully we can, what we build there, it would be great to sort of also get some learnings from that Docker Compose journey, and be able to publish sort of a generic version of this that other people could use, because I'm sure we'll see more partners wanting to do deployments that are managed entirely by Docker Compose. We don't use Compose in our core team. Our hosted service is actually running on Kubernetes, but Docker Compose is, obviously a great technology, and I think there are plenty of use cases where it's absolutely the right one. So it'd be great if once we get everything working nicely for your use case, if you could help us sort of publicize it a bit to the rest of the community.
Sure. I'll be happy to help, because it's been a kindly tough to learn journey without like proper roadmap of what to do and how to do it. But yeah, I'm happy that Frank and you and Alexa have been helping. Yeah, and I'm sorry if I've been nagging, sending you a lot of
No. I think so, Joshua. I think actually this is more a private conversation, but I believe that there is actually budget within our partnership agreement for OpenFN to lead a lot of this work. So I think everything you're doing right now is just over and above what's called for. So I think we're planning on, in the coming weeks, when our partnership is all done and dusted, we're planning on very specifically focusing just on your work. So anything that you're able to do before that is just gravy. It's extra good. So don't worry about taking too much of our time. Please just keep telling us what you're doing. We'll keep trying to troubleshoot, and then when time comes to actually standardize the whole deployment, you'll have full commitment from our team to help out.
Sure.
Yeah, and Joshua, I saw your questions around the migration of workflows and things like that. We're just thinking through the best way for your use case. But it's absolutely possible to seed the OpenFunction app with like template workflows that we'll be building. So we're just thinking about like the best way to do it, but absolutely on the roadmap, or sorry, in discussion to hand out to you. But sorry, everyone, I have to jump to another call. It was really nice to meet you, Joshua, and really nice to see the faces on the call. We'll be in touch.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining. Any final questions or comments or?
Well, I mean, I also work with Pius. And
yeah. Oh, hi, Pius.
Hi. Must have been quite a list.
I'm good. Yeah, no worries.
It's okay. I think we got
Gaspar as well. Hey, Gaspar.
Hey, hi, Mr. Tyler.
Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
thank you. Yes, thank you. I'm happy join this meeting. Actually, Gaspar from the team here in Tanzania, working on especially on DHIS2. So I joined this meeting so that I can learn more things about this OpenFn.
Cool.
And how to. Okay. Thank you,
Well,
Mr. Taylor.
you are
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you, Margaret, and the other teams.
Our pleasure.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ayodele, Megan, shall we wrap things up and then share notes and a recording after?
Yeah, absolutely, Taylor. Thanks for the presentation. To everybody who dropped comments and are searching for links and added information, we'll be sure to get hold of you via email and also be posting on our social channels and community forums. So keep a watch out for that.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. That was really fun. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll look forward to seeing you on the community forum. Yeah, happy integrating.
Fantastic.
Bye, everyone. Do have a
Everyone.
good time. Yeah, cheers.
Bye now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now